Wednesday, July 18th at 6 p.m. We'll start with roll call attendance. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh. Here. Councilmember Mylum. Here. Councilmember Palmer. Here. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Byrd.
Here.
Mayor DeVeard.
Here.
And Councilmember Borton is absent.
Thank you. Item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you will all rise and join us in the pledge to our flag. Item 3 is our community invocation. Tonight will be led by Pastor Rod Enos with the Southside Christian Center. Thank you so much for joining us. If you will all join us in the community invocation or take this as an opportunity for a moment of reflection.
Thank you, Mary Tammy. Father God, we thank you for just the many blessings that you have brought to our city, to our community. Lord, thank you for these men and women who have dedicated their lives to serve this community and to make Meridian a better place. Lord, thank you for the great blessing and prosperity that we are experiencing in just so many ways. And Father, we just ask, Lord, your continued blessing and favor and protection over our city, Lord, over every family and over every individual. Lord, we pray specifically, Lord, for our first responders, for just special protection over them. And Lord, tonight, we pray, Lord, for just your wisdom to be upon these men and women as they make decisions in regard to our city. I pray, Lord, that they would be guided by your Holy Spirit, that they would do it with justice and with righteousness, that every decision would be for the benefit of all. And Lord, we just pray your blessing and your continued grace over our city in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us. Item number 4 is adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
Okay. On the agenda, under 10A, the ordinance number is 17-1739, and item 10B is ordinance number 17-1740. With that, I move we approve the agenda as published, and mayor sign, clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Okay, there were no signups under 5. Item 6 is our consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve the consent agenda as published, for the mayor to sign, the clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we'll move into our action items. Item 8A is a public hearing continued from July 5th on H 2017-0075. I'll turn this over to Bill while opening the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Before I get into tonight's presentation, I did confer with the city attorney, and you have the ability. Let's try that again. I did confer with the city attorneys today at our council prep meeting, and he did indicate that you could open up both items A and B and hear them all as because it's the same property owner and same applicant, and we can, because they are both related to one another, so it may be simpler to open up both, but in your motions, that you would just still have to take
Separate
separate
them
action
out.
on each one of those. So if
Okay, I will open then the public hearing on item 8B as well on H 2017-0076.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So this evening, we do have 2 short plats in front of you this evening. Both of them are labeled as healthy living. One is a condominium plat, and the other is a short plat or a subdivision of the land. The current zoning of the property is Zone CN, and it's located at 5175 South Howry Lane. Some history on this property: it was annexed, some of it was annexed in 2014, and a majority of the site was annexed in 2015. And with the annexation of the entire property, there were development agreements that were required and are in place that govern the development of this site. The City Planning Division has processed a couple property boundary adjustments on this parcel as well. That's reconfigured the parcel in the way you see it today. And then there also been the issuance of 2 certificate of zoning compliance applications, one for a YMCA that is currently under construction, and the other is for the Hillsdale Neighborhood Park that is also, I believe, is under construction at this point. So as I mentioned to you, so the first plat before you, item A, is a short plat. So basically, as I mentioned to you on the history portion, because there is a YMCA there, the applicant is wanting to condominiumize that building and separate their condos, their building from the future St. Luke's portion of the site. So staff has reviewed that with conformance with our standards, and we find that it does comply with the requirements of the short plat process, and so we are recommending approval of that application before you this evening. The second portion of the application is to subdivide the property. The applicant is proposing to divide the single parcel into 3 parcels. One would be parcel or lot number 1, which is currently the park site under construction. Lot number 2 is where the YMCA is currently under construction. And then lot 3 has an existing single-family home on the site that is currently, if I'm not mistaken, under the ownerships of the Hills families. And with a previous action, the council did allow that single-family home to remain on this parcel until redevelopment of this property. So right now, the home is proposed to remain as it was approved with the recorded development agreement. The applicant has frontage along South Howry Lane here, which in the future will be constructed as a future collector road, and it will be called South Hillsdale Avenue. Staff has required that they provide, all the lots have cross-access between all 3 parcels for access to the streets, and then a 20-foot wide landscape buffer is required along that collector street as well. Here is the approved site plan and landscaping approved with the YMCA building, and here's the future Hillsdale Neighborhood Park. And this shows you how they kind of interrelate to each other. If you note, the road along the north boundary of this development was approved with a separate preliminary plat, and that would be constructed at a future date. So right now, although it will have frontage on that local street, primary access for this development will come off of Howry Lane. And that was one of the reasons why this was continued out from the July 5th hearing, is because we had to make sure that ACHD did accept the right-of-way for Howry Lane to be extended, and we did receive confirmation of that. Staff has not received any written testimony on this application, and I will conclude my presentation and stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bill. Council, any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. Would the applicant like to make comment? Good evening. Thank you for joining us. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Kelly Kerr, 9233 West State Street, Boise, Idaho.
Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, Councilman, we're excited to have this before you to keep the progress going out there. Just one real minor point of clarification: the parcel with that we're creating, or the lot we're creating for the single-family house, is actually just a life estate, and so it all is owned by the YMCA. That portion of it. It just has a life estate on that portion, so needed to be separated out to make things a little bit cleaner. Other than that, we're in agreement with what staff has put together in their staff report, and be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you so much. Council, any questions for the applicant?
I have none.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to provide testimony on this item? Okay, seeing none.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
seeing none, I move we close the public hearings on H 2017-0075 and H 2017-0076.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on items 8A and B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve H 2017-0075 and include staff applicant comments.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve item 8A. Any discussion from council? Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Aye. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve H 2017-0076 and to include all staff and applicant comments.
Second?
Have a motion and a second for approval for item 8B. Any discussion? I would like to thank you that we now have a legitimate
Yeah.
city park lot, so thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Our thanks. Item 9A is under our IT department, and, oh, there's Dave.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, happy to be here before you today. Looks like I do not have control of my PowerPoint over here. So let me go switch that real quick. I apologize.
We need someone from the IT department. Sorry, Dave.
No worries. I appreciate you being willing to accommodate my request to move this to a different date and time, as I was out on vacation for the last week and a half, so thank you for that. With that, I will get started. So, about a year and a half ago, the IT department, along with the support services director and the CFO, were given an initiative to look at mobile devices and determine how we get a better handle on what we are supporting, what we're spending our money on, what we're spending taxpayer money on, and have a better understanding, have some better processes and things defined. So this gives you an idea of some of the background here. We've seen a huge demand for mobile devices increasing over the last 10 years. If you looked at us 10 years ago, the amount of cell phones that got email that were city-issued devices or city employees were zero, and that has changed. We're up to probably 300 devices mobile devices that get city email. So, big increase. We have multiple occurrences where we found people with multiple devices or services. We wanted to make sure that new devices and services were justified. We want to make sure that there's proper approvals in place so people aren't just getting these things without actually needing them. And then we also wanted to make sure we had consistency across the board. So that's kind of where we started with. So what we set out to do was to create standardization on the different technologies we were supporting, establish a business case for new devices, define redundant devices and services, and kind of, you've seen the documentation that we have to date. We have actually an application that people go through and submit. It's web-based, it's internal. It does the same thing, except for there's a little bit of smartness to it, so you click on something and it automatically says, hey, look, you can't get that other device, because it recognizes that it's the same type of service or device that we're offering. We address in that SOP upgrades and replacements. We provide some distinction between emergency services such as fire and police and other departments that may not have as critical needs for multiple services or devices, and we looked at how we can consolidate. So, yeah, pretty much covers that one. So some of our results to date, we have developed this SOP. We have a business case. The paper form of the business case represents the application as well. What it doesn't represent is we have a bunch of signature areas on there. On the app that we have, it actually gets routed digitally, and there's email notifications that go to people. So a supervisor gives approval, a director gives approval, and then finance and IT also give approval on the various different types of devices or services that are being requested. So we feel like that is a good way to justify and make sure there is an actual need. We get approval by decision makers, so people are aware of what's happening and where money's being spent. We have had an opportunity to consolidate some devices and services, and I'll touch a little bit more on that, and we're doing an annual review of these devices and services, and that is something that we're doing internally as part of the budget process with finance. So one example, or two examples of devices and services being consolidated. One is the fire department. Many of the command staff had a desktop or laptop plus an iPad for the various services that they need to provide, and we consolidated down to a Surface. Now, the cost on that one for the device itself wasn't a whole lot less. It actually ended up being a wash, but the cost for supporting those devices in turn did go down because we're supporting less devices, which is great. We did that with 6 devices, so it went from 12 to 6, which is, if you noticed our quarterly report, you'll see that some of our device counts went down, and that's part of the reason why. Another department or division that we're working with on this right now is our crime investigation division in police, or criminal investigations division in police. And so far, we've been able to see a lot larger savings, mainly because many of these officers had MDTs and desktops assigned to them. So we took them down to a laptop that could serve both of those purposes at a substantial cost decrease, about $3,500 per device. And we did that with 7 of them. So anyway, this is kind of just the start of it. As we're going through, as we're replacing things, we're replacing devices, we're trying to make sure that we look at, hey, look, what are the actual business needs, what device is best going to fit that need, and how can we eliminate duplication so we can reduce costs and still maintain their effectiveness. So that pretty much covers it. Are there any? I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Dave. Council, any questions?
I have none.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you coming and giving us this presentation before our budget hearing. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the process related to upgrades and replacements and how that's vetted, if that's vetted through the app? What education do directors have in terms of SOP, and how are they being required to follow the SOP as well, I guess is important for me to know.
So, Councilmember Kavanagh, on that question, I will have to divide it into 2 different types of devices, right? So we have mobile devices as it comes to cell phones, tablets, whatnot, and then we have laptops as well. So tablets and laptops kind of fall into their own category, and then cell phones are separate. So cell phones we get through state contract through our current provider, which is Verizon. And those upgrades, as we defined in the policy, we said if there's a 0 cost to the city and there's a need for an upgrade, we'll do an upgrade. And in most cases, that's the case. But you cannot get the latest and greatest phone in most cases. You're looking at a generation behind, which is acceptable in pretty much every case that we've ran into at this point. For tablets and laptops, those fall under IT's recommendations for replacements as we currently go through with computers. So those are part of that process.
Madam Mayor, additional question if I can. So, Dave, when this whole process that you've laid out is completed in 4 years, I guess is kind of how I look at our replacement cycle.
5
What's
years
the
for replacements.
But I guess did we start this last year? Or is this
This
the
went
first
into
year with
place-
replacements that this SOP is being used?
This went into place, I believe, March, so springtime last year of 2016.
So essentially, when a full replacement cycle has been completed, what's the assumption that an employee will, assumption of devices that an employee will have? Essentially either a desktop or a laptop?
At this point, so
And a phone?
what we ran into was we found employees with 2 or 3 devices, which didn't seem reasonable to get the job done, right? And so what we're looking at is when it comes up, because obviously it's kind of a sunk cost at this point a little bit with the devices we currently own, but when it comes up for replacement, we say, hey, look, where can we consolidate, move things around, and try to minimize that. So depending on what the need is, we'll either recommend a laptop or a tablet, if that makes sense. So this is the first budget cycle that we've done that process, and
Okay.
yeah.
However, I think you initially also looked at air cards and eliminated the need for multiple.
We have.
Yeah.
And we did that with fire specifically. They had data on most of their iPads, and we reduced that. They had to shift some of those over to their cell phones to be able to use those devices in the field still. But another area that we've looked at and consolidated services is cell services. We've gone through a first sweep here about a month and a half ago to try to reduce the number of active service lines that we have that aren't in use. So we're bringing that as part of our audit process annually, but we're actually going through a sweep right now and trying to make sure that things that aren't needed are removed. And I think this last go around we removed about 12 or 15 lines of service. So
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kemmer.
I'm looking at the SOP now. Item number 4, under services and devices, it says, I think to the end of it, that the public safety, senior management, directors, and mayor may be eligible for having the same service fulfilled up to 2 times if the business case deems appropriate. I assume that's pertaining to the amount of devices.
devices and or services. So the specific use case that I can bring to your attention is police or fire, right? Many times they'll have a cell phone issued to them, which has a data plan associated with that and cell service, right? But their MDT also has cell service associated with it, or a data plan associated with it, which is actually split off and done through 911 funds, not under the city, but it's the same idea, where in some cases they may be able to justify that, and that's again up to the department discretion, but for directors, that's up to the mayor's discretion.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Thanks, Dave.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Thank you, Dave. Okay, item 9B is under our Community Development Department, all things transportation. We haven't heard this for quite some time, and I know you have a number of things that are currently underway, which it means positive for our city.
Largely, yes, Mayor. Thank you, members of the council. I too was on vacation last week, although not with Dave Teedy, so I appreciate this. Would generally be at one of your workshops, but just happened tonight you didn't have a whole lot of action items, so it worked out nicely that we could both present workshop-type updates to you on a regular hearing night. That being said, too, I did put the memo that's in your packet together before vacation. I have some updates. Some things are happening pretty rapidly. It's construction season in the transportation world, and I have some handouts and some verbal updates on some of the things in that memo. So hopefully you have access to that or have looked at that previously. I'm going to kind of just run through that with you. I don't plan on reading it to you. I assume you have read what you want, taken and gleaned it over anyways, and looked at the projects you're most interested in. But I do want to highlight a couple of things as we go through. And the first one I want to start with is on the second page of my memo, and that has to do with the 10-mile Amity intersection. This project isn't actually technically in Meridian. It is in our area of impact, but I did want to just provide an update. This is a lower priority project on our priority list and at ACHD as well, and I failed to put in the construction timeline on that project. Right now, it is a 2021 project for construction, and ACHD is currently toying with having it be a 2022 project. So just wanted to bring that to your attention that as a single lane roundabout, initially construction will most likely be in 2022 at least. with the draft integrated 5-year work plan that is anticipated to be released later on this week. So as I mentioned, it's construction season. It's also budget season, as I know you're well aware, because you got a full day of it tomorrow. Hopefully not a full day, but at least a portion of a day tomorrow. I do want to hand out portions of the state transportation improvement program and just highlight a couple of the projects that are in Meridian that I think you'll care about. So I'm going to give these to the clerk. So I'm going to go ahead and start as that's being passed out. One of the things you'll see in there is on the last page, I believe, of that is an update on the STAR project that CenterCal is doing with ITD. So as part of that agreement, they were to add both northbound and southbound lanes to Eagle Road. The northbound lanes are now complete. The southbound lanes, though, haven't hit that trigger point that the STAR agreement, it's based on the square footage of buildings, and they haven't hit that trigger yet. And so in the memo, it says that CenterCal plans to construct the additional southbound lane in 2018. Just found out while I was on vacation, there was some discussion amongst ITD and Compass and CenterCal, I assume, and that's actually 2022. So you'll see that in that handout, that they're pushing it back to 2022. It's my understanding that could advance. They just don't know when exactly they're going to hit that target. I don't think we need to read too much into that and go, oh, they're not getting any more tenants, but I have not talked to CenterCal or anyone over there to know that to be the case. But for the last couple of years, this project has been delayed because they haven't hit that trigger, and I think they're just kind of pushing it out there to say, okay, we'll put it out here, and if we need to do a tip amendment, we'll bring it back and we can accelerate that. But again, I just wanted to give you the most current information on that project, and there are still plans to add that additional southbound lane, but it most likely won't be in the next 12 months. Then on to the good news. That's the next item in the memo, and that has to do with the Chinden corridor. You probably already heard, seen, US 2026 in the draft ITIP. There are 4 projects now on US 2026 corridor. We had the one already that this last year got put in that would widen Chinden between Eagle and Locust Grove. So just that 1 mile. It's actually a little less than a mile because it's already widened near the Eagle Road intersection on Chinden. But bring it back to Locust Grove, including some intersection improvements. In the draft tip that I just handed out, you'll see those projects called out. The next miles then from Locust Grove to Linder are shown as new projects. So again, that's on the first page. The first page is the one that's already in there, and that's about a $10 million project. And then on the second page are the new projects. The first 2 are unfunded, so we're going to go on the west end of the corridor, so from Star Road to State Highway 16, 1 mile. That one's called out separately. And then from State Highway 16 to Linder, so that's 3 miles, and that's called out separately. Both of those are unfunded projects, but they're in early development. So the state is doing some preliminary engineering and design work, but they don't actually have the construction dollars yet to put into the program. But that's still a good sign. It's a listed project. It's got dollars. It's got a name. They're giving it a number. They're working it through the process. But those ones are a little bit further out. So from Linder back to and through the State Highway 16 intersection, to Star Road, those are a little bit further out, but again, they're at least listed in the draft ITIP. And then Linder to Locust Grove, as I was just starting to mention, those 2 miles then do have a construction year in 2022. So 2021 is Locust Grove to Eagle, and then in 2022 they're proposing to do 2 more miles at about $15 million roughly cost to get the next 2 miles done, which would get us to and through the Linder intersection, which is great. That's kind of what we've been pushing for, is 4-lane widening. So, and then the last page again is the Eagle Road project that I mentioned previously. So we are, through the mayor's office, I've been working with them a little bit to get the word out that there's a draft tip out there, and encouraging our citizens and businesses and those to travel the corridor to be involved, voice their opinion to ITD, that we're thankful that these are in the tip, but 2021, 2022, 2024, that's a ways out there. So anything they can do to accelerate the construction of that corridor is appreciated. So I think that's the update on the corridor that I had, unless there's any questions about that one. Then I'll just keep moving on.
I think, I don't know, the public comment period ends
End of July.
next week, next week. And so we won't know how many people have made comment or anything like that, correct?
There's
Until
usually-
after that closes.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, there is usually a little bit of a lag time before I can get that information, but I'll certainly share that with you when we see if we can break our record from the
Okay.
last time. So.
Yeah, so, council, just, have we sent information to council to also submit comments? Do we want to submit a comment as the city? Not this time.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I certainly can draft a letter if you'd like to co-sign something. I can put a letter together here and ask and get your signature right around for signature this week if you'd like to do that. Sure.
Yeah, as citizens, I have. That's what I did. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, so encourage you all to voice your opinion. But yeah, I think if the council has an interest to do a letter from the city officially in this round of comments as well, that would be awesome. Because things have changed since we sent the original letter. And we need to appreciate what they've changed.
Speaking of appreciation, so I'll work on that letter and bring that back for your review and signature. The U.S. 2026 task force that you put together too, I just would like to publicly, I guess, acknowledge their work, and I don't know how much influence they really had in this process, but we had some pretty dedicated folks that were part of that team as well that were working different angles to try to get this on the radar at the ITD board and at the legislature and in the community. And so we had some fairly regular meetings over the last couple of years, and we're starting to see some of that hard work somewhat pay off, although again, 2021, 2022 seems like a ways out there, but we've made some strides anyway, so I want to thank them.
Thank you.
I also just want to highlight, again, not necessarily in Meridian, but certainly I'm impacted, and I bet you are too, Interstate 84. And if you're probably paying attention, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that there was some additional Garvey bonding that the legislature granted to ITD board, and they're going to do the widening on the interstate here in Nampa. So that's great news, I think, for even, folks, the mayor likes to say, all roads go through Meridian. Certainly the interstate's the biggest one that does that, and that, people coming from Nampa, Caldwell, to and through Meridian will just help that commute. So just won't dwell on that because I assume you all know about that, but just wanted to highlight that since it has been a quarter or so since I've been here to provide these types of updates. The next quick update that I have for you is on the next page of my memo, and it has to do with the Idaho Avenue. In the second part of that update, it talks about a street closure and artist reception planned for Saturday, September 16th. So I understand last week that the call for artists was not very successful, and that event has been canceled. So I think that MAC is trying to do something in lieu of that, some chalk art kind of contest thing again, so I think similar to what they did last year. But they did not get the types of responses from artists to do more kind of semi-permanent 2D artwork in the blue zones on Idaho Avenue. And it's at least been postponed or canceled for this year until they can get some more artists that are interested in participating in that. So some bad news there, but we're hopeful that there can be some other activation that maybe the business owners along that corridor or downtown in general to really, have some outdoor activities, particularly along that section of Idaho where the platforms and bike racks and other amenities were put out here a couple of years ago. So, and then one of the other ones that I wanted to spend a few minutes on, and I'm sorry to kill you with paper, but I got another handout. This is hot off the press too. So this is a memo that is going to be presented and discussed with the ACHD Commission tomorrow during their Commission meeting, and I'm not going to read this to you, and I don't expect you to read it now, but I think it does a good job of just summarizing where ACHD is in their budget process and really in the integrated 5-year work plan, which contains, where they spend most of their money. So again, you can read that for later. I have some things I want to jump to within that packet, though. There's not page numbers, but attachment 2 is really where I'm going to call your attention to some projects and the status of them. So again, there's the draft will be shared with the ACHD Commission tomorrow, and it's anticipated that they'll release it for public consumption the next day, and then on August 21st, close their public hearing and adopt it hopefully on September 27th. So again, this hasn't even been through the ACHD Commission yet, but it was on their website, and I snuck it off, and I'm going to share it with you first. So again, attachment 2, I want to share the new projects, which again is good news, right? New projects in Meridian, good news. We have 5 new roadway projects that are proposed in the draft integrated 5-year work plan. Eagle Road, Lake Hazel to Amity, Lake Hazel, Eagle to Cloverdale, Linder, Chinden to State, Locust Grove, Fairview to Ustick, Locust Grove, Victory to Overland. Now, some of those aren't wholly within Meridian, like the Linder, Chinden to State project, but portions of that are within our area of impact. So I counted that one anyways. And Lake Hazel, again, that section from between Eagle and Cloverdale isn't wholly in Meridian, but there are sections that are within Meridian city limits today. Then intersection projects, there's a new intersection project, Victory Road and Locust Grove Road, planned for construction in 2021. Then moving on to community programs projects, Cherry Lane and the Meridian Library pedestrian crossing. So that's one that we've been hearing, I've been hearing anyways, some need for, some want for by folks that are trying to cross, some middle school students in particular, crossing there instead of at 8th Street or Linder. The library is an attractive destination just on the other side of Cherry, and we get some people that are crossing mid-block there between 8th Street and Linder. So looks like ACHD is going to put a ped crossing in there, a hawk signal in right there. And then Main Street and King, which is down here kind of on the south end of the split corridor, just north of Franklin a little bit there at King Street. There's been some issues with the 3 lanes of traffic, and I've even done it. Someone stopped in the far left lane, and you're like, where are they stopped for? And then you're like, oh, shoot, there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. And so some overhead to flash and things like that when there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk there. So, and then some more good news, advanced projects, Eagle Road, Amity to Victory, Linder, Cayuse Creek to Chinden, 10 Mile, McMillan to Chinden, and then 10 Mile Ustick to McMillan. So 4 new advanced projects, and you can see the planned or the current construction year, and then the proposed 2018 to 2022 construction year. So most of those are advancing 1 year. And then intersection projects, Fairview Locust Grove, which is fairly high on our priority list, Lake Hazel and Eagle, and then Meridian Road and Lake Hazel are some intersection projects. I didn't go through the bridge projects. You can look at them for yourselves, but bridges I didn't think, they're sort of more of a maintenance type of a thing than I thought. So one, I don't know if it's bad news, but I mentioned it before, 10 Mile and Amity intersection, that single lane roundabout, ACHD is going to do that in 2022 instead of 2021. At least that's the plan, the draft plan. And then most of the removed projects on the next page are because they've been constructed or will be built by others. For example, the Eagle Road and Amity Road roundabout, currently a single lane roundabout, but development is to make that a dual lane roundabout here in the near future. So it's coming out off of ACHD's books, and it's going to be done by development. And there's a couple of others. You can see a couple of our community programs projects. Fairview, West 1st, and West 4th are coming out because those were completed projects this year. And you can also find that information in my memo. Those were substantially complete, in most of them in this last month in June. I do state in the memo that I'll share and summarize the draft integrated 5-year work plan. From my perspective, I just summarized it for you. I don't know if you want to spend more time on it or not. I will also send you a link where you can look at the whole document, but it's pretty thick. I mean, those are just the Meridian projects. And then historically, we've sent a letter to ACHD or comment to ACHD on, looks good, or hey, can you move this one, or switch this one with that one? I don't know, from my perspective, and I'll be honest, I haven't had a lot of time. I just got back in the office yesterday to do that exercise. But just the summary that I read, it all looks pretty good to me, and I don't know what we would request or comment other than thanking them for considering our priorities and including the ones that they could in their programming. But I will share it with you, and if you see something that looks out of place, I'm happy to come back and we can talk about it some more. We have about 6 weeks to send something to them. Again, it was August, what did I say? August 21st, I believe. Yeah, August 21st, their public comment period closes. We probably could buy a couple more weeks because their adoption isn't until the 27th, but really to give staff an opportunity to consider our comments, we should get them any requested changes sooner than later. So again, I'll share that with you here tomorrow, just electronically, and give you a link. Again, you see anything that looks funny or want to talk about or we think we should comment to ACHD on, let me know and I can add it back on the agenda with the clerk. And does that sound okay?
What has the Transportation Commission, have they had any comments of note to?
No, Madam Mayor, this
Do it?
just came out. It may have been available Friday, but it's, like I said, this hasn't even been presented to the ACHD Commission yet. So they haven't had a chance to look at it. I will share it with them too at their next meeting, the first week of August. I can't remember the date, but
Okay, why don't we put this on the council agenda after they've had a chance to look at it?
sure.
If you can get that out to council and the commission, that would be great.
The last thing I had, and I apologize, at least my version, you can't really read it very well, but speaking of the Transportation Commission, at their last meeting, they did receive an update. We requested, the city, you, Mayor, signed a letter here. It's been probably about 2 years ago because we sent it just as the Meridian interchange was either going into construction or during construction, asking the state to look at speed limits on State Highway 69. And they said, well, we're going to get bad data because it's a construction zone right now, so let's wait and do the speed study. Since the interchange has been open for some time, they've had some time to gather the data. We heard a report back about some potential changes to speed limits basically south of Overland near Calderwood, and had a good discussion with some police traffic patrol folks from the police department about where that transition should happen from 55 to 35 at Overland, at Calderwood, south of Calderwood, looking at the 85th percentile. So just wanted to share a little bit of that with you. What ITD does is largely based on what most people drive, what they're feel comfortable in driving, and making that transition. But certainly considering some of the crash history and things in that area too as they look at this. But I just want to give you an update that that's one of the things they're chewing on right now, and ITD is considering some of the comments from our police department and others on the Transportation Commission. So with that, that's the all things transportation update that I have. But if there's anything I glossed over or didn't touch on that you'd like to, I will stand and we can discuss that. And if there's nothing, I will come back first or second week of August and we'll talk about the integrated 5-year work plan a little bit more.
Okay, perfect. Council, anything for Caleb?
I have nothing.
Mr. Kavner?
Just a comment and a question. First, Caleb, you're too humble. Congrats to you and the mayor for the receipt of the AIC award for the work over on Idaho Avenue. That's been a project that you've been a great champion of, and congratulations for your hard work on that, both of you. That's great for Meridian. My question was just about the speed study on Kuna Meridian Road, depending on where you live. What are the next steps then? They're going to evaluate comment from PD and then come back with a recommendation? Where does the city have another opportunity to chime in if needed?
Yeah, I've got that question out to Erica now. Erica Bowen. I imagine she is the ex officio member on the Transportation Commission from ITD. Asking her that, and I imagine in August she'll come back and we'll have a follow-up discussion, and the state will say, all things considered, here's what we'd like to do. Obviously, with you being our ex officio member on there, if it's something you don't, concur with, or we need to, bring here or whatever, I'm open to that. But that's the next steps as far as I'm concerned, and we'll see where it goes from there. But we'll I think in August, be ready to follow up, so.
I think it would be good, Caleb, to have the recommendations with their study back. We're surrounded by state system, and see what those recommendations are and where they might be changing, and get feedback from the Transportation Commission if time allows. Otherwise, council will be that review committee.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I kind of assumed that you would defer, and it's not our decision or the transportation, it's the state gets to decide, but we can vet that, and I think ITD appreciates that we are involved. I'm kind of working under the assumption at this point that you're okay with the Transportation Commission receiving that information. I can share it with you as appropriate. Now, again, if you hear something or you see this that I've got in the memo and you don't like it, I can elevate that and ask Erica to come here and present that same information to you as well. But until someone raises a flag and says, no, that doesn't sound right, that doesn't feel right, we need to elevate it, I'm kind of working through the Transportation Commission. So, and again, you can see where a summary of their recommendation is in the packet, and I don't know that it's going to vastly change. They may move the 4,500 feet or two more or back, but it's essentially going to transition a little bit sooner based on, again, crash history and driver behavior.
Madam Mayor, maybe just one more comment. And Caleb, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know that Caleb has been working with VRT to put together a tour of the transit center downtown and maybe Happy Day. And I just would ask that once we get dates finalized, if you could pass that invite on to the rest of the city council as well, should they want to attend.
I will just give you the date right now on that, with more details to come. I'm still working out on all the details there. But it will be the second Monday in September. Due to Labor Day holiday, the Transportation Commission meets the first week, so this is kind of a special meeting for them on the second week. And so, yeah, as Mr. Kavanagh just stated, we're looking at doing a little field trip and checking out the Main Street Station downtown, maybe the Happy Day Transit Center in Caldwell, and maybe even their Gowan station. So I'll definitely extend that invite with some more of the details as they develop. So.
Anything further?
Thank you, Caleb. Very nice.
Thank you, Caleb. Item 9C is under our police department.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for the chance to come back and revisit this item this week. As you all are aware, everybody was present except for our council liaison, and she has been back as of yesterday, and she's been briefed on this as well. And we've had some pretty intense discussions over the last 4 hours as far as should we or should we not bring this in front of council today. And I do believe that it warrants still hearing our presentation, and then I have a couple of suggestions after we're done. So just to give you some additional information based upon some feedback that I have heard, IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police, is an international conference that was founded in 1893. It's 124 years. They've been around a long time. We definitely respect their reputation. The broadcast group that we mentioned last week has been in partnership with IACP for 9 years. I would guess that if that partnership wasn't working out, they wouldn't be asked to come back again this year. So although I don't have as much exposure to the broadcast group, I still trust that IACP is making strong decisions. The video that we mentioned last week would be viewed at that conference. Last year, the attendance was 17,500 attendees across the globe. I did say that was international. You get people from all over the world. The audience is police chiefs, medical personnel, PIOs, attorneys, admin, support staff. Last year, the President of the United States. This year, the invitation has gone out to the President of the United States as well. Also, there's a possibility of the Vice President, the Attorney General, and the FBI Director often comes to these conferences. So you get some VIPs as well at this conference. I think it's my turn on the mic. That's just, it's a way of telling me to move on and be quiet, all right?
Madam Mayor?
I guess that concludes my testimony.
Chief,
Ms.
oh,
Mylum.
Yes.
I was just going to say, the only other person that this seemed to have problems with was the pastor, so it's maybe only, affecting special.
Don't.
Did they do it to you, Caleb? No, that's what I'm saying. Oh, you're special too.
If anybody, it should have been Caleb when he was talking about transportation, because that was the shortest presentation I've ever seen.
I agree.
He
That's
didn't have
why
time.
it didn't.
He didn't have time to prepare because he was on vacation. Let me see if I can get back to where I was at. So also support staff. All those people that I mentioned. The reason why I mentioned that is because it's a wide range of people. It's not chiefs of police only. It's even the spouses of those people. And if we were to do this video, we would be the first in Idaho to be featured. And that's pretty cool. The video will be posted online as well as views from the website and increase Google searches access. And the rest, I think, has been covered. Now, the part that I want to go into is that we feel that this would be a good thing to do. But we also recognize that there's some concern. We also recognize that some people feel rushed in their decision. And to be transparent, we reached out to several agencies to get their feedback. Several of them have not got back to us. One did, from the state of Ohio, that the city PIO didn't even know that the police department had did the video, so that wasn't very forthcoming. I don't know the history of that employee, so I don't know if it's a long-term employee or a new employee or what. But and then we also this afternoon received some feedback from a police department in California, and that chief of police was really careful with his words as far as not wanting to be negative, but he had some pretty neutral comments, and those neutral comments concern me on the mileage that he got out of that. He felt that he got out of the video. He had a lot of positive things to say about one-stop shop and how it generated their program, and in that regards, he felt that it was good. But as far as the mileage after the fact, it wasn't as promising as we wanted. So the additional agencies that we've reached out to have not come back to us. So I still want to go with the rest of our presentation because it adds to the request I'm going to make of you at the end. So yeah. I'm going to just actually have KC come up and add a few more points for us.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Chief Levy, thanks for having me. So I just want to give you some costs locally, what we're looking at compared to all of this, and just kind of an overview of what my take was when I first heard about this. So locally, a video like this, 5 to 7 minutes, where they let you keep all the raw video, I estimated about $7,000 to $10,000. So that was an estimate, obviously, but that's what I've found in this industry. We do have a lot cheaper production costs than other cities, so I can understand why theirs is larger with this broadcast company, and I can understand why I did ask if we could use a local company and still have our video featured, and that's not an option, and I understand that. They have a broadcast company that they're used to working with, and the costs are typically higher in other locations. We are pretty lucky here locally. So you have to look at the other stuff, the other side of that, and it's hard to quantify the exposure that we'll get. Being on another person's website that's an international website that does elevate us in searches, Meridian Police, that video will come up. So that's a good thing. And staff savings, so staff time savings. If they've done this video a lot, that's less scripting on our part, because even when we get production companies, we have to do scripting a lot. We have to do a lot of the logging of the video, and that takes a long time, logging interviews, picking out which ones we want to use. So there is I would imagine, a significant staff time savings on this. I think the big, and one more thing, there's a lot of ways we can use it with that raw footage. We can reuse this video on social media, on our website, take that raw footage and just throw out quick sound bites. We could even reuse it for the state of the city. There's a lot of ways we can use it. We can loop it in the police lobby so that people sitting in the lobby can watch the video. So there's a lot of ways we can use it. I think what really hit me when I first heard about this was the national climate when it comes to police. And they've never had a professional video done. So that was my first thought. But we can't ignore that there is that climate out there, and it is here in Meridian too, as much as we don't want it to be. But we still want, I think a video like this would instill a lot of pride in our community, and it would keep our officers more safe because our community members would see what their hearts are. And then leading on, building on that, I thought I've been around a lot of police departments in my time in news. We are so lucky with what we have here. I think we have something really unique with our Meridian Police Department. So part of me thought, what if we could change other departments by them watching this video? Aside from the recruitment and all those other aspects, what if we can make some changes nationally? So that's kind of where my mind was going when I heard this, is that we do really have an awesome example here in our police department. And I would love for it to be seen nationally, but there's the cost to consider. So I just wanted to let you guys know what that would cost locally and what we're looking at aside from all of that. Chief.
Thank you, Casey. I think that covers a lot. We do feel that this would be a sense of pride. We wanted to talk about helping morale, but I didn't want you to think morale is bad, because morale is not bad. But this would be an opportunity to validate what the officers do out there each and every day. And we get that feedback from the community almost daily. What I wanted to say is that if there's that feeling of rushed and not wanting to make that decision today as far as we're spending this money, we understand that. This is not a battle I want against the police department and city council, and this is not the one that I want to put my chips in and say, absolutely, we need to go forward on this. However, there's a caveat, is if there's not a comfort level to go down the route of the international conference at the $22,500, I do believe that, based upon a lot of the things that I said and a lot of things that Casey said, is that we still need to do our own. And I would ask for you to consider a sum amount not to exceed, so that we could proceed on a 1 or 2 videos and to do it locally. With that, we won't get quite the exposure. But I think it's time that we demonstrate to our citizens what we actually do, because we are proud of what we do. So with that, there was a couple other areas that we were going to talk about. I believe I did cover it, as far as we had someone else who was going to come in and speak, but I think I covered the spouses and significant others, the focused audiences, and the model agency. So I guess I open it up for questions, I open it up for discussions, comments, and anything else that I can provide to you, or Casey can as well. With that, Mayor, I stand for any questions.
Okay, council questions.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
this is just a comment, but after the research that I've been working on most of today, I definitely think that we need a video. However we go about that, I think that it would really benefit the police department, the community, and the city as a whole. So there's no doubt in my mind that we should be putting that together. I'll let everybody else chime in first.
You know, Chief, I guess in coming in towards the tail end of your meeting, just to listen to the discussion, what struck me was what Tracy had said in terms of when you and your team go to this international conference, one of the things that he makes effort to do is to go into, I guess there's a room to view all of these different videos to see what departments around the nation are doing in best practices. And what excited him was that you can highlight what you are doing, and the recruitment piece to that of what it speaks to the kind of people that you wanted to attract are going to be the ones that get excited about seeing that and consider a move or employment with the city of Meridian as you have openings. And I guess that's what resonated with me, that you have a possible $7,000 to $10,000 cost to doing your own video. But what is the 12 and a half? In addition, what kind of value does that bring that you can't always quantify?
Madam Mayor, Council, if you allow me to add on to that, you're absolutely correct. And that's the whole purpose of these videos, is to show best practices and showcase departments for other departments to get ideas from. That's really the purpose of it. It's a leadership film series that, hey, here's some agencies that do it right. Go see how they do it and see if you can grasp any ideas off of them. There was a discussion on recruitment last week, and I did make the comment, and I just want to add to it, is that the recruitment issues are not specific to Meridian. They're specific to the profession in general across the United States. But just let me highlight our latest example that we had with recruitment. We sent 55 letters out to people to test. Out of those 55, all promising they would be there, 35 showed up. Out of that 35 showing up, 5 failed the written test, 5 failed the physical test. The rest were pre-screened out for background issues with a net of 5. So we have to go and test again next week, in fact. And that's at a considerable cost. And so we and the profession are having a hard time getting people interested in profession. And we do feel that this would be one aspect of the positive aspect. But the mayor is absolutely correct. How do you quantify that? That's the one thing that we asked Casey to do, is take that $22,500, split it out into what those production costs would be, When you don't use a local company, there's per diem costs, there's equipment costs, there's production costs, there's the conference costs. And then there's whatever rate they're charging us for the marketing. And we know that they're doing it because they make money. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. So it's a benefit to both. But how do you quantify, is it worth the value? I wish we would have more time to get a few more agencies that would provide us with that input. I cannot believe that there's people out there that's not going to say, heck yeah, that's a good deal, you need to do that. But I can't come in front of you today and say, agencies have told me that personally. And for that, I don't want to rush into doing something that we might regret. So with that being said,
Madam
I'll
Mayor.
take more questions.
Mr. Byrd.
Chief, I think Casey said that we could get it done locally for about 10,000. But, you know, I'm on another commission, and they're looking into doing a deal, and a guy that I think's very, very knowledgeable about this stuff made a statement to me that locally here, to get a good produced video, you could be up in the $20,000. And that was, they were checking into it for this committee, but, so I don't know. I think if you're going to put one out, you better put a nice quality one out there, something that, you know, somebody knows, has the experience of doing it.
I would gladly take $20,000 to do that, if you're offering.
See what your liaison does, makes a motion.
Other discussion, other comments? Ms. Lowell Roberts.
I just keep going back to the value of having it come through this conference. Do we currently, Chief, recruit nationally anyway?
No. Right now, our advertising is through word of mouth. It is through the Idaho Press Tribune and through our website. So I guess I kind of misspoke, is we do nationally if someone clicks on our website, but we don't go out and advertise in national publications for that. And it's a high cost to do that. I mean, that's why there's a high cost to doing what they're doing, so.
Madam Mayor, follow up. It seems to me that the value in that alone, reaching potential recruits and on a national basis with one video, having experienced throughout the chamber world what happens when you receive something through a respected organization versus you do it yourself and try to post it out, that the value alone right there could make a huge difference in having it come through the organization that we can share versus doing it ourselves and pushing it out, and it's instantly national, being released at a national conference.
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Little Roberts, that was a discussion we had too, as far as, can we do it locally? Can we pay for advertising locally? And what audience do we capture? And the cost that it would be for like KTVB, because we had an expert giving us, and you might get 30 seconds or you might get 2 minutes at a very high cost one time, and it's regionally. It's Twin Falls and Boise and maybe up to McCall and Ontario, and that's your audience. Now, you do get some on the website, but then they'll only play it once. And then if you wanted to play it again, then it would cost you this much, and to play it again, this much. And so it's just an unknown as far as what audience that you would reach if you did that. I think if we did it locally, our biggest push would be to put it on our city website, put it onto our department website, put it out onto our other social media, our Twitter, because we're getting word out there somewhere, because we got the invitation because of the good that we do, and someone saw that, and they saw that somewhere. So we always have a plan B.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Mylum?
Chief, if you did it this way through them, would you have a specific recruitment statement or ask of some sort, or is it just going to be a general? I'm trying to picture it in a way where we can use it multiple ways, like within this, as the city marketing material for the police department, but also how do you turn it into a recruitment video?
Madam Mayor, Council Milam, and that's a fair question, is because we don't exactly know what the focal point's going to be. What they were interested in was the community relationship, the youth activities that we do, our positive culture. So it wouldn't be specific to recruiting, but if we were to do this and sit down with an executive producer, whether it's with this broadcast company or someone else, our outcomes are going to be to show people why they would want to work here, why we're an agency that we're worth either picking up and moving across the country to, or leaving another department for, or changing careers for. It's some place that I feel safe, it's some place that I feel proud, and it's some place that I want to work. We're getting that some now, but not a lot.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Mylum?
So just so y'all know, I've been on the fence on this. I go back and forth all day. I've made some phone calls. I've looked at a lot of videos. And that's why I know that we need to do this. I hate that we have to make this decision tonight and I can't do more research before the decision has to be done. That's the hard part. We don't know. There's 17,000 people there. We don't know how many are actually going to watch it. I honestly don't pay attention to some of those things at conferences, but probably not all of them. So it may be a great audience, it may not. Then it's on their website for at least a year. Some of them are on there for longer. So there are a lot of good aspects of that, and not being able to quantify the value of that has been the hardest part for me, because for the same price we can make 2, maybe 3 different videos and promote them, however, through Facebook and YouTube, and there's so many avenues. So if nobody has anything else to say, I'll make a motion, but that's just what that's where I've been. All right. I move that we approve the budget amendment for Thought for Leadership film series not to exceed $22,500.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve item 9C. Any discussion from council?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner?
just out of curiosity, do we know how much the city has spent in the past on video production? For your economic development videos, for your state of the city videos?
I don't know what Brenda has spent on hers that go out to attract businesses. My state of the city is more local, so, and generally it's, yeah. So, no, I don't.
$8,000 is what I'm hearing.
$8,000. Is that the Welcome to Meridian one? You can't talk from
Yeah.
there.
So
But-
11,000 for the Welcome to Meridian, 8,000 for the other one that you were referring to.
Yeah, and I
Hearing
don't
her
know on
whisper
the
over there.
economic development.
I know that the police department's never done one, so the answer is 0. We've not spent any money.
It isn't a bit 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, just a comment. I think the point that I'm trying to make is that we'll be spending more money on this one video than we've ever spent on video production in the city. And with I have felt in the past, when we've had discussions about video outreach in our community, we've been able to articulate the value that we get from that. And what I've heard from numerous people tonight is that we're not able to really articulate what that value is from having this video played at this conference. Significant amount of funds, a very short time period. I struggled, Chief, as you know, last week to be supportive. I still don't know what we get from this, except for that it plays at a conference. I've spoken to a wide variety of people, both in the public and private sector, about this issue this week. I've spoken to many video production companies to get quotes. And one of the things that I heard time and time again is that, yes, there's companies like this in every industry that highlight those that have the success stories that are worth sharing, but that is their revenue model, is they go out and they say, you're a success. And I mentioned, I think to somebody as we were leaving, it reminded me a little bit of when I was in high school, I got selected for Who's Who in America, a big book that had my name in it. I was very proud. I was told I would get scholarships and national recognition. And my parents spent $100, and I got a book with my name in it. And it didn't take away my accomplishments, but when the book showed up, I kind of said, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's like a phone book. So I don't think this is quite the same thing, but this is a company that's market is built on producing video content for trade shows and conferences. And I don't disagree with the chief that we should look at something that is specific for PD. I firmly believe that we could produce something that achieves, I think, a better purpose because we're in control of the narrative by producing something ourselves or by hiring a production company doing it than by turning over a significant check to a company that's going to have control as to what the finished product looks like. So I'll be opposing this motion.
And I think that's what everyone has struggled with, and why we pulled Casey into the discussion, because we had just kind of giggled about being selected to be on Rob Lowe's something something, and, oh, it was only 25,000. Now, paying that to see Rob Lowe might be worth it in and of itself, but couldn't justify it on tax dollars. But I think there was different values seen in this. The Google search, that we could not get that value by putting it out ourselves. Some of the search engine, I guess, opportunities that this allows being quantified by a third party, as Councilmember Lowell Roberts had pointed out. Yeah, it's hard to put a number value to it, but those are things that we would not get with our own video, and the exposure that you have with law enforcement that our own personnel see value, and that's why they go and check them out, because they do want to see what others are doing with best practices. And yeah, I was quoting Tracy without his permission, but he said every single word
He was
of that.
supposed to be here, so.
He's right behind you. That's only why I said
Okay.
that.
Let's talk about it.
Madam Mayor?
We do have an active motion on the table. Yes, Mr. Kavner.
Has the city ever spent dollars for search engine optimization for our website or for the police department?
Not for the police department, we have not.
I don't think with anything.
Thank you.
I only halfway understood what that was.
That's cause.
I knew
Good question.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
Madam Mayor, I've struggled to, or I've hesitated to say anything because I said a lot last week. But as I sit here listening to everybody, it sounds like no one's sold on it, and everyone's just kind of trying to talk themselves into it, from even the chief and the maker of the motion. And so I feel like we owe it to the taxpayers to take a break on this one, find a better means to produce a video to accomplish the goals of recruiting, and maybe look into SEO opportunities, and maybe even for the same dollars be able to get more eyes on a video that we have produced at a cheaper cost, and the eyes of people looking for the job doing it. So, I don't know. Like I said last week, I think we need to put the brakes on and find a better way.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Mylum.
So the other part that can't be quantified, that has value, is their website that is on, that's specifically for at least a year. So it's at the conference, but then it's also on their website. And also, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, my gosh. All right, give me a minute, sorry. I gotta write notes.
If there is no further discussion, are you ready for roll call?
Oh, Madam Mayor, I remembered.
Hey, I knew if
Okay.
I just
Well,
talked
that
a little
pressure.
bit.
The national and international recognition that it will get at the conference, and especially with the officers that we send over there, the pride and the sense of appreciation from all of our police department, but especially the ones that will be there at the conference and the ones in the video, I think has a definite value to the city, even though you can't put a dollar on it.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Lowell Roberts.
I agree with Councilman Mylum regarding, I can hear Casey already coming up with first one in Idaho selected, one of 16 in the nation. You can't get headlines like that or taglines like that without, an honor like this.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
just a word of caution for council. I talk a lot about precedent, and we should be prepared then as our Parks Commission, when they receive national awards, our fire department, when they receive national recognition, to be prepared to spend, again, significant amount of tax dollars to produce a video for them as well. It's not just $25,000, it's $25,000 for each department.
I would just also mention that each department, as these opportunities have arisen, and they do go through a discussion and criteria that you don't hear the ones we get that have already been weeded out. There was legitimacy for this, and I think that your command staff spent considerable time before even bringing this to this level of discussion, vetting it to see what that value would be. So
Madam Mayor,
I don't think this
yeah.
sets precedent.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to comment anymore for in the discussion phase, but I don't disagree with what anybody says. All I can do is ask you to vote your conscience. And I guess the only thing I would say is that Councilman Kavner aged me a little bit, because Who's Who in America, I think it was only like $40 when I was in high school. So we don't disagree with any of it. But you can't accomplish things if you don't ask, if you don't discuss, and that's the purpose of being here. So vote your conscience, and we'll make it happen.
Any other comments? Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh?
No.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer? No. Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9D is under our fire department.
It makes 22,000 sound like nothing.
Madam Mayor, members of council, good evening. This is a follow-up to the conversation we had last week when we discussed the district offer and the 12 firefighters and the approval of that offer, and you asked me to come back, work with finance to present a budget amendment form for 2017 to cover the cost of those personnel from August 21st through September 30th, and then moving into FY18. You did get 2 copies today. I want to make sure we're working on the right one here. The first copy you received had the ongoing personnel costs of $223,092, and then it showed that for each successive year, 5 years after that. I would be the best chief in the world if I could promise you that was the cost, but it wasn't. That cost of 223 is just for those 6 weeks, getting in through August 21st through September. So you should have the spreadsheet in front of you, the amendment form that articulates year 1 cost in 2017 of the 223,092, the FY18 cost of roughly 1.13 million, and then the ongoing cost from FY19 through FY21 of 1.5. I just want to make sure we're all working under the same sheet of music here.
Where you got that at, Mark? Excuse me.
That is on page 2 of the.
Okay, I see it now.
Up in the upper left-hand corner. So with that, as was presented to you, the rural district is paying up to $1.5 million from August 21st of this year until the completion of the FY18 budget year that ends September 30th. You will see that reflected in the cost, the personnel, wages, benefits. In the FY17 current budget will be $223.92. Operating cost of $6,000 to get them started into the academy. And then we also, working with finance, have an informational form for you showing the FY18 costs. Add all that up and you're going to be at $1.5 million. So what we want to show is that the district is fully funding all personnel, wages, benefits, as well as the operating costs of the first year as per the agreement. In addition, we were asked to work with finance to bring forward the impact fee items to get the station built as we discussed last week. We want to get the design work started right away. And then move into the neighborhood meetings with some design work, and then move into construction. And so within the capital outlay, those are all impact fee eligible items. That is under what we currently have in our impact fee balance. In fire, if you look back over our CIP, when you approved impact fees, this was the big project that was allocated for impact fees in our capital improvement plan. So we do have the numbers guru with us. He's looking at Robert. That scares me a little bit. To answer any questions on the numbers, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
you're asking for a budget amendment for this year of $4,716,000?
That's correct,
$716,000.
Councilmember, that's correct. The big chunk of that is coming from the capital impact fee eligible items.
I understand that. How much of that do we need for October 1st?
For October 1st, talking
This
specifically
year.
design
Yeah,
work.
I mean, this is this year's budget.
Yeah, design work specifically is going to be architectural designs about $314,000 roughly.
So actually, probably about 500 to 600,000 will be used this fiscal year. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
And the rest will be used in fiscal 18. Why don't we just put it in the 18 budget?
It's never been our practice to not show the full obligation, so you know what you're
I understand that, and I'm the
approving.
biggest backer of that.
I was just answering your question, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Byrd, we're asking for you to approve the entire project up front today, instead of coming back to you tomorrow morning with this exact same enhancement for the remainder of the 4.7 million. We thought we would just ask you for all the funds today and ask you to consider the carry forward the appropriations for the entire project today rather than tomorrow morning.
Other questions?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner?
Todd, can you educate me on the cost of building figure?
Councilman Kavner, I can take that one. 9 years ago, when we built our last fire station, we paid about $163 a square foot. for that station. Construction costs today are ranging anywhere from $250 to $350, depending on how much extra you put into it. We don't build fire stations with fluff in them. We build them to last. We build them to standards. For example, Boise Fire just built 2 new fire stations. They were at about $325, $340 for each one of those 2 stations. They had a ton of upgrades in those. I did talk to 3 realtors as well as 3 builders right now. I also had a presentation 2 weeks ago from an economist from the University of Utah talking about the forecast moving into the spring and summer. All agree that we're going to see a downtick slightly in the cost of building. Interest rates are expected to rise, which is going to slow down building growth. Right now, if you go out there today and try and build a house, trying to find labor is very difficult. You can talk to any contractor and they'll tell you that. They are fully anticipating that to come down. So we have calculated cost based on a $250 per square foot cost, as compared to $163 9 years ago. So inflation certainly is applicable, but we took the best information we could gather from builders, realtors, economists to put a number to that.
Okay. Madam Mayor. Chief, I know Idaho Falls just built 1 or 2 new stations. Do we know the cost on those?
I don't. I could call Chief Hanneman and get that from you. I know that their cost is going to be slightly higher. They basically remodeled their main station to add depth to their bay. They took out the entire flooring to put in new concrete to add enough protection for a truck company to be in. They also added their administrative offices into that new building. So I could certainly reach out to Chief Hanneman to see costs there.
And Madam Mayor, Chief, I don't think that they're too high by any means. In fact, my biggest concern is I think they're too low, quite frankly, and I just want to make sure that we're having a real accurate picture as to what we think this facility is going to cost.
We did discuss that with Finance today. When we get those plans drawn, certainly we set a budget, and we're going to try and stay within that budget. That's the goal. There will be additional collection of impact fees that if for some reason those construction costs come in higher, we can come before you next year when we get ready to build with a more defined approach.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Palmer.
Madam Mayor, Chief, you mentioned the Boise stations. You said about $340 per square foot?
320 and I believe 340. They had 2 stations that they built.
There's one in particular, I think was one of them on Overland, or was it Fairview?
I believe Overland is one of them.
Overland. They have like some super fancy doors that look insanely expensive, and you mentioned they have several upgrades. What are some of those things, upgrades because they're Boise and they do that kind of thing, that are super not necessary, not something that we'd be looking at upgrading our buildings to later? It's you.
Mayor, Councilman Palmer. To answer your question, yes. I will talk specifically about those garage doors. They are the newest and latest and greatest in the fire service. Right now, we have just the roll-up garage doors, almost like you would have in your home, only bigger. These new garage doors are bifolds. They
$250,000. Madam Mayor. Can we recess for 5 minutes so you can turn it down?
I'll remember it.
They did. Yep. Sorry about that, Dean.
It's your fault.
I tried.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order again, and sorry for the technical difficulties. But Chief, I know that if you will restate the question, so we know that you know the question you're answering.
So I'll restate it as I understand it. The question was, with some of the added amenities that we see in other fire stations, particularly with Boise, are those costs that we would be looking at adding on to our fire station design here? I'll mention specifically, as Councilman Palmer alluded to, the garage doors at the new Boise fire stations. That is the emerging, it's not technology, the emerging garage doors in the fire service. The reason for it, there is actually a reason. They're bifold doors. They open in 3 seconds, allowing the crews to exit quicker. If the power goes out, you can literally close them and open them with a finger. Now, that being said, they're super nice, and if we could afford them, I think they'd be great. They're about $30,000 per bay. So this is not something included in our fire station proposal. They did all concrete floors in their fire stations for reasons. We wouldn't be doing all concrete floors in ours. So there are some amenities that you see in departments that, and cities that have larger budgets, et cetera, that they do some of those things. We would not be looking to do that here in Meridian. We want to build a fire station, A, that will last, hold up to construction and design, B, provide a neighborhood-friendly place that's welcoming, that provides a great place. It's a 24/7, 365 operation for our firefighters, so certainly we want to make it functional, but we will also want to make it economical to that stand as well. So I hope that answered the question.
Thank you.
Anything further from council?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
there's no other comments, man. This is a top high score for me. I move that we approve the fiscal year 2017 budget amendment for Fire Station Number 6 for a not to exceed amount of $4,716,000.
Second.
What? Any discussion from council? Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. Item 9E is under the Mayor's Office and Legal as a follow-up to last week's discussion about unmanned aerial vehicles. Are you taking this or Bill? Okay.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, so we discussed this drone policy last week and the purpose behind it. The request from the council was to insert into the policy the types of uses that we would be using this device for. So if you look at the one that's in your packet now, item 6 has been amended to include, we basically pulled all the departments, and if you recall the discussion, I know Councilmember Milan wasn't here, right now, only one person in the city is qualified to do this. So, but we polled all the departments and said, at some point in time, if you had a person qualified to use this device, what do you think you would use it for? And so this is the collection of the ideas that people know can be used, have been used in other places, could be used here. Right now, I would say, and probably Ms. Emery from the mayor's office would be better, the marketing is first, because right now that's the primary thing they plan on using it for. Events, activities, city activities to promote the city. But the other ones, mapping, management, assessment of city facilities, construction projects that are ongoing. You know, this is as exhaustive as people could come up with. I'm sure there will be more, and at that point, we would bring it back. But we try to at least request in each department what they think they could possibly use it for, and that's what we came up with, was these all varied uses. But again, right now, it's primarily going to be marketing, and at some point, we may be able to do it more on some of these other types of things. Probably Casey would be the better one to answer on any more specifics about the drone itself, but that was the insertion into the policy based on your direction.
Council, any further questions for Bill?
Madam Mayor,
Mr.
I did
Kavanaugh?
have one additional question for either Bill or Casey, and it pertains, I guess, to observing the vehicle when it's in flight. I talked to a lot of drone enthusiasts and people about the city using that this week, and one question that came up that I didn't have a good answer for is, will this be controlled by an individual, or will a flight plan be programmed and then have the UAV fly and return on its own accord?
You passed my knowledge, so.
Don't touch it.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavanaugh, good question. So, testing my drone test. There always has to be a remote pilot in command, and so that person, there will not be any unmanned flying of the unmanned aircraft. There will always be someone. There will always be someone managing the controls.
Madam Mayor, just to follow up. So then the pilot will always be able to see what the drone is recording?
Yes, because you have that image right there.
Great.
And then we also have a provision in our policy that talks about if there's raw footage that is captured that we don't want to move on, we get rid of that, I think is what the policy said, correct? Yeah. Does that answer your
It
question?
does, thank you.
Good job. Now we know why you scored so high. Way to go. Any other questions from council?
I have none.
Okay.
So, Madam Mayor, what we'd be looking for is the council's all right with the policy in its current form. We would bring it back next week with the resolution to adopt this as part of our policy manual.
Okay, so I have a motion to instruct staff to bring back a resolution at next week's
moved.
meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And thank you for all the work you put into that, and also for adding the clarity of proposed uses so that the public does have a better understanding of the intent. Okay, item 10A is ordinance 17-1739. Mr. Clerk, will you please read this by title?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City of Meridian ordinance number 17-1739, and ordinance file number H 2017-0057 Preakness subdivision for annexation for a parcel of land being a portion of the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 25, Township 3 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, as described in Attachment A, and annexing certain lands and territory situated in Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent and contiguous to the corporate limits of the City of Meridian as requested by the City of Meridian, establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of said lands from RUT to R4, Medium Low Density Residential District in the Meridian City Code, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance, and providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, council, you've heard the reading of this ordinance. Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
move that we approve ordinance number 17-1739 with suspension of rules.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve item 10A. If there's no discussion, Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh?
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer? Aye. Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 10B is ordinance 17-1740. Will you please read this by title?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City of Meridian ordinance number 17-1740 and ordinance file number H 2017-0041 Getty's subdivision for annexation for a parcel of land being a portion of the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter, Section 3, Township 3 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, as described in Attachment A, and annexing certain lands and territories situated in Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent and contiguous to the corporate limits of the City of Meridian as requested by the City of Meridian, establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of said lands from RUT to R8, Medium Density Residential District in the Meridian City Code, providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance, and providing for a waiver of the reading rules, and providing for an effective date.
You've heard this ordinance read. Is there any concerns, questions from council? If
Madam
not,
Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
I move that we approve ordinance number 17-1740 with suspension of rules.
Second?
A motion and a second to approve item 10B. Mr. Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh? Councilmember Mylum?
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer? Aye. Councilmember Little Roberts?
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd?
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 11 is future meeting topics. Any items to consider for future agendas? Upcoming events include tomorrow's the budget workshop starting at 8 a.m. Vet Fest is Saturday, July 22nd at 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Kleiner Park. CapEd Credit Union has a groundbreaking topping off ceremony next Tuesday at 4:45 on South Meridian and Overland. And next week from tomorrow is the Town Hall on July 26th at 6:30 at Challenger School. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes. Thank you.